Hey, everybody, welcome to Energy Superheroes. I'm excited today to have Sam Arnold, and he is the founder and COO of Carbon Path. And they're doing something very interesting, which is trying to solve the fugitive methane emissions problem at oil and gas in the oil and gas industry, which I know is a big thing. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Peter. Really appreciate the time.
Yeah, so glad to have you and happy to learn about Carbon Path. I know that methane has about 25 times the global warming potential compared with CO2, which is a big deal. And I know that we obviously are still extremely dependent on oil and gas. So I think part of this energy transition is going to be to reduce any sort of impact from the oil and gas industry. And so obviously fugitive methane emissions is a big deal. Tell us more about that, how you guys came to your solution at Carbon Path. Give us a little backstory about how you decide to address this challenge and what's different about your approach.
Yeah. These are all great questions. So the overall problem we're trying to solve, I think it threads the needle with what you were talking about, is we all are still going to use oil and gas. It will take time to migrate over to other energy sources. But the good news is we can actually reduce methane emissions quite a bit without having a major market impact. And what I mean by that is there's over 4 million wells in the US. Only 800,000 of them produce anything. And of those 800,000, north of 500,000 produce less than 15 barrels a day. So there's a huge tail distribution of wells that only make up roughly 5% of oil and gas production in the country, but they're responsible for upwards of 75% of all methane emissions.
Wow.
So if you can shut those down responsibly, you can make a huge dent in methane emissions, at the same time have a marginal impact on supply and therefore the consumer.
Now that's big, and I haven't heard people really focused on that opportunity because everyone's more focused on, let's call it, new things. There's so many new technologies in the world of energy transition. I think most people are focused there. So that is an interesting problem. I haven't heard about that. So how do you go about sort of closing down those wells? Who owns them? What are the legal implications, and how do you get owners to agree to sort of shut down? Because I imagine even if they're producing a small amount, to them it matters because they're the owner and it's revenue stream.
Right. Well, that's right. And so you have to financially incentivize oil and gas companies to properly plug and abandon them rather than go ahead and sell them down the food chain to a smaller operator with a lower cost structure. So the way you do that is through a carbon credit from the voluntary offset market. And that's really how Carbon Path was born. I semi-retired from Citadel. I worked in the financial industry for a long time as a portfolio manager running oil and gas investments. Started my career as a petroleum engineer with Exxon. So been around the oil and gas industry for a long time, kind of know how it works. And as I was looking at personal investing, I became fascinated with the carbon markets for a couple of reasons. One, all these companies have made pledges that we're going to be net zero by whatever, pick your date, 2030, 2040, 2050. And they're all in various stages of figuring out what they can do. They've all hired the right teams. They're starting to go out with their operations folks and try to figure out what they can change within their day-to-day operations. And I think what they're finding is not a whole lot right now for technology. If you're American Airlines, yeah, you can buy some renewable fuel, but you can't even hope to do 10 basis points of the total amount of fuel you burn. So I think a lot of companies are coming to the same conclusion that they need a lot of carbon credits to be able to achieve their stated goals. Now, when you look at that, the majority of them are forestry based or sustainable ranching, farming, and those are fraught with a lot of problems in my view as I was looking to buy them. One, most of them are project specific and bilateral agreements. If you want to buy them as an individual, you have to bring a lot of money to the table and work with a broker with, very large fees. I kind of liken it to buying bonds in the 1980s. Huge bid-ask spread, very little market transparency. So as I was reviewing the carbon credit market, I thought, well, this is great because there's going to be a massive demand for credits and very little supply. So I wanted to be a part of that, but really found that it was difficult to do so. So I was like, wow, this market's really ripe for disruption. Meanwhile, talking with the former management team of Bruin, a large oil and gas company in the Bakken, they were thinking about, hey, this is a problem with methane emissions. We shut down some of these wells. So we got hooked up together, formed a carbon path, and decided to, incentivize operators to shut down wells prematurely by getting a carbon credit. And we think it does great things for all players and participants in this market. So from the corporate standpoint, they could want a credit like this because it provides the scale that they need at a cost that they can afford. We're talking $20 to $30 a ton. You can generate significant amounts of credits, and you can do it on an oil field timeline where you need 1 million credits and you need them spread out over 12 months. You can deliver that because the average well is going to do 5 to 10,000 tons, and you're shutting that in at a price tag of $50,000 to $100,000. So we think it makes sense for corporates who need offsets because we think this is real, it's permanent, it's additive. Nobody's going to do this unless the credit's available. We also think it's great, for the environment in general, because as we stated earlier, as you stated, methane is a huge one of the actual areas within the overall spectrum versus carbon dioxide. So it's a huge problem that we can solve, and the consumer should like it too, because it's not really going to impact them financially at the pump or, at the gas plant, but it's still going to make a material difference to the environment. So we think it's something it's a weird trifecta where everybody should be on board with this. It solves the problem for the oil and gas companies too, so they can actually fund the plug-in abandonment and don't have to just try to sell it to a smaller operator. So I think everybody wins in this scenario. So does that all make sense?
It makes complete sense. I think you've thought through it really intelligently, and I've thought about the forestry management programs, and of course, it's a good idea to preserve trees. But trees really, surprisingly, even for a large amount of trees, don't eat that much carbon dioxide.
Right.
So it's a real challenge to meaningfully impact the greenhouse gas emissions issue just with forestry management.
Right.
We obviously already have a lot of trees, and the U.S. has been preserving trees for a long time under various federal programs. So I think your point about the wells is well taken, makes a lot of sense. So Carbon Path as a company, then how do you guys attack this market and sort of, I'm thinking about it from a competitive advantage standpoint. How do you roll out and be able to reach all these wells and sort of lock them up in your program so that you're able to reap the benefits of your concept, your idea here?
Yep. So we have two different methodologies. The first is, and the one that we first rolled out, is wells that are already producing that are actually making money for operators. So these are the wells that are producing less than 15 barrels a day. They are making money, so the government can't force you to take them, shut them down. That would be appropriation of assets. So, they're going to keep operating, but with a $20 to $30 credit, you can incentivize them to spend the money to plug and abandon, create the credit, sell it to a corporate entity that's looking to meet their emission goals. So we're helping with that. We have the process, and we're also putting everything on blockchain. So what we're going to do is provide complete transparency, which I think is one thing that the forestry type credits is missing. And it's just difficult by the nature of forestry. I don't think anything negative about existing registries or how they do it. It's just, how do you go out and measure if you're looking at thousands of acres of forestry land, if trees were growing, and is this tree going to go, from 10 inches in diameter to 12 inch? it's a difficult problem, and it's one that a lot of smart people are working to solve. But for now, we can tackle this low hanging fruit and we can provide complete transparency. This will be the only carbon credit where it's going to come with either a state or federal certificate that says the work was actually done. So we think by putting it on blockchain, by having this state approval, having federal approval, and by, putting all of the data on chain, people are going to, and anybody, this could be NGOs, this could be the SEC, this could be, investors like myself and my previous life, will all be able to go and look and say, yep, company X was able to generate these credits. We can see them. And then once it's on blockchain, you have complete transparency as to the chain of sale as well as retirement. So that's really how we're trying to do that, is provide that infrastructure for companies to be able to abandon and plug wells prematurely rather than selling them to, the smallest operator, generate the credit and generate some revenue to offset that expense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how long have you been at this so far with Carbon Path? And when did your team get together? How long you guys been doing?
Yeah, it's been about a year. So we came up with the idea, probably about a year ago, started working on it. We just closed our seed funding, so we're in full tech build out mode. We had a lot of interest, so it's been great, and thanks to all of our investors out there. But we're doing a pilot project in Montana now, and so we're going to put all that on chain and put it at least on the test net initially, and get ready to go from there for full launch.
That's great. So the project you're working on, there's a well. I imagine that you're going to be helping to close down. And does do you guys go out to the corporates and get that commitment to essentially buy those credits ahead of going to the well operator themselves? Is that the sort of flow, or how does that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the initial dance, right? And what we're hoping to do is, because you can generate a lot of scale very quickly, hope to create a real marketplace through blockchain. So if we're tokenizing a ton of carbon from this, we think we can really democratize it. And so anybody that has the ability to buy any type of cryptocurrency will be able to have the ability to go buy our currency. And you're going to know and have complete transparency that the ton that I bought came from this well in Texas at this time, and it was shut in, and it started in this date. So you'll be able to know everything about it. And once we have created that marketplace, we hope that, we won't have to have as many conversations with companies as well as corporates, because we can just provide a platform for them to engage with each other.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. In the beginning, it'll take some manual labor to get it off the ground, but then once it's up and running, it should be a lot more seamless.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
So you mentioned your seed funding. When do you expect to launch your Series A capital raise?
So, so we'll see how this goes. I mean, I think if we start generating some revenue here pretty quickly, I'm maybe in a year, we'll see. It just depends on how fast this takes off and how much tech we need to build. We're building it initially with the expectation of scale, with the expectation of thousands of wells. As I said before, there's 400,000 wells that are producing less than a couple barrels a day. And so the market opportunity is massive. So we want to solve that problem. There will be others, and that's okay, because our mission is to actually shut down all these wells, get those fugitive, because there's two really problems, right? There's the fugitive methane emissions. There also can be, if a well's sitting there either producing a little bit or idle, or it might be, producing, but, the operator turns it on for, 1 day a month for a barrel and then shuts it back in. Meanwhile, you can have, H2S growing from bacteria. You could have, casing failures. Then you can get methane leaks up the annulus and into water supplies and other bad things. So, we want this problem to get solved because we think it's very to be very disastrous for the environment, for people living around them. And so however that takes, if we win, great. If somebody else wins too, but if the goal is achieved, that's great too.
No, that sounds great. And so your technology build out from your seed funding, is it primarily digital technology, or are you also building sort of some kind of monitoring system where you go out and take, I don't know if you take methane air samples or something at the site, figure out how much the emissions are before you close it down, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so that's the way we designed it, is with the end goal in mind. So you could go out, and there are people talking about methodologies where you kind of put a tent around it and try to measure the methane. And we're saying that is going to be a very precise measurement, but unfortunately, nothing's going to happen because you have to have a large capital commitment for people to go out and spend money to find out if this well is leaking enough methane to shut it down. But we know just from statistical analysis that that well might not be a bad one, but collectively, if we solve this, it's going to have a material impact. So the way we're approaching it is more of a reservoir engineering. So we're saying we know, and we're actually being conservative by looking at it from more like a scope 3, saying, here's what these wells will produce over the next 10 years. And we know this because we have 100 years of reservoir engineering calcs on our side. And we also have it third party verified by one of the reserve auditors that have commonly worked with the SVC and others that should be comfortable with their work. So we have this ability to know how many hydrocarbons and therefore how much carbon is going to come out of the ground. So we can look at it from a methane, from a statistical standpoint, but that actually gives us a larger amount of credits than if we just said, hey, let's just assume it's all burned and create the carbon credit that way. So we're trying to be the most conservative, but it still gives you the best answer that it's a reasonable price of carbon to allow the full shutting in of these wells and have operators be indifferent as to continue to operate them or selling them versus taking that P&A liability permanently off their balance sheet, which could become a big issue for them in the future if laws change. Maybe you sold it to mom and pop X, they went bankrupt, and then now has to come back to the mid cap who has the balance sheet and the financial capability to properly plug and abandon. And, like you kind of have in federal waters offshore.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes a lot of sense from a risk standpoint. So if you can at least, are you looking at the compensation to the well owner to be some sort of discounted cash flow against their future cash flows, or do they actually make money over what they normally would have made, or is it about break even?
Yeah, we want it to be about break even. Eventually we think the market's going to dictate that price.
Right.
But, initially with bilateral sales, we want it to be kind of in point of indifference. So the operator's like, okay, well, this is probably a better path for me from the intangibles of doing what's right for the environment, taking that liability permanently off my balance sheet rather than, kind of kicking the can to somebody else.
It sounds awesome, Sam. It's really, really a cool idea, and it makes logical sense, and it's a win for everybody that's in the sort of the value chain. So I think ideas like that tend to actually get executed. It certainly fits. So tell me, other than run Carbon Path, what else do you do do you have any hobbies, or what do you do for fun?
Well, I have 3 children, so I coach my middle son's travel team, coach my oldest son's house team. I'm the commissioner for their little league baseball. I am a assistant scoutmaster. So I do a lot of space.
That'll keep you super busy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that is great. And this is all baseball related stuff.
Baseball, Boy Scouts. They do. My sports, they don't want to have anything to do with. So,
So what are your sports?
I always did golf and wrestling. growing up. So
Oh, all right. Yeah, I had
I
my
don't,
brothers up in Ohio. They wrestled. I played football and baseball. So, uh, baseball is a time-consuming sport. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of games, and you're always going somewhere or other.
yeah. And when we first did it, it was kind of in the middle of COVID where, um, you know, everybody was looking for something to do. There wasn't anything. It was outdoors. So I think we played like 60 games last year because, teams would just call you up. Hey, you guys want to do a scrimmage somewhere? Sure. There's plenty of fields available. I mean, it's kind
Yeah,
of
it's something to do, right? And I always thought it was interesting because baseball as a sport is just it's naturally socially distanced because the players are all spread out.
exactly. And then they did the mask and the dugout and everything like that. But yeah, once you're on the field or batter, it was pretty easy. So we definitely spent a lot of time doing that, which has been great. I mean, I think it teaches a lot of great lessons. I mean, I hope none of my kids are listening to this, but I don't think anybody is going to be an MLB player. But it gives them good life lessons.
Hey, you never know. People,
Yeah.
you can have some I mean, I think there's a guy, Michael Jordan. He's a little bit of a late bloomer,
Oh yeah, that's right.
right. And another one, Steph Curry, who went to my college, which is Davidson College up in North Carolina. Big time bloomer, got passed over by all the big schools, went to Davidson, and then they made the Elite Eight. And then he continued to really he took off after he was in the NBA. So, yeah, you never know, right?
Never know. Never know.
Well, this has been great, Sam. We're about at time here. Sam Arnold, founder and CEO of Carbon Path, and they have come up with a really unique way to solve the fugitive methane emissions problem from oil and gas wells by making this advantageous to all parties in order to do the right thing. So I think that's awesome. Sam, thanks for coming on Energy Superheroes today, and look forward to following up in the future with your progress at Carbon Path.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.